Didn't even know camels had teeth.
You found that out
Real
in a hurry.
quick, yeah.
Amy Slaton's story has always been one of quiet strength, resilience, and the unrelenting pressure of living life in front of millions. To the world, she's the charismatic, funny, determined star of 1000 Del B Sisters, a woman who inspired millions with her honesty and vulnerability. But behind the laughter, beyond the edited scenes, lies a far more fragile and human story, that of a mother fighting not only for her health, but for her children, her family, and her peace of mind. From the very start, Amy's life was shaped by struggle. Growing up in a small Kentucky town, her world was simple, yet shadowed by hardship. The Slaton family was close-knit, but imperfect. Amy and her younger sister, Tammy, shared a bond built on love, pain, and the shared experience of being different in a world that rarely shows kindness to those who don't fit in. From childhood, Amy carried both hope and hurt in her heart, sensitive yet strong, a girl who learned early how to endure. School was cruel. While other kids played freely, Amy faced ridicule and mockery for her weight. Every insult cut deep, leaving invisible scars that shaped her sense of self. She tried to laugh it off, hiding pain behind humor, but the ache lingered. Even at home where love existed, there was sadness, feeling that she was fighting a battle the world didn't understand. Yet those years built her resilience, teaching her compassion and the quiet strength that would define her adulthood. Friends remember Amy as fiercely protective, especially of Tammy. She'd defend her sister without hesitation, taking the blame when things went wrong. Even then, people sensed the fire in her determination to keep going, no matter how heavy life became. That determination would one day carry her into the national spotlight. When TLC approached Amy and Tammy for 1000 Del B Sisters, it felt like destiny. The show promised a new beginning, a chance to tell their story and inspire others. For Amy, it wasn't just TV, it was a chance to reclaim her life, to prove that change was possible. She dreamed of motherhood, stability, and health. But she couldn't have known how deeply the cameras would invade her reality, how every tear, every mistake, every private moment would become public property. At first, the attention felt good. The fame, the fans, the validation, it was intoxicating. But soon, the thrill turned into exhaustion. Every meal, every doctor's visit, every emotional moment became content. Amy later described it as living in two worlds, one real and one for the cameras. In one, she was Amy the person. In the other, Amy the character. Despite the pressure, she persevered. She underwent surgery, changed her lifestyle, and celebrated victories that inspired millions. Fans saw her smile, but not the nights she cried herself to sleep, terrified of failing. Fame brought visibility, but it also took her privacy and sometimes her sense of who she really was. Then came motherhood, the dream that had fueled her from the beginning. Holding her first child, Amy felt the world stand still. For a brief moment, the noise of cameras and criticism faded. Her children became her anchor, her reason to fight. But raising kids in the public eye was harder than she imagined. Filming clashed with family time. Producers wanted polished moments while Amy longed for normal ones. Friends say she often felt torn between two worlds again. On camera, she smiled through exhaustion, playing the cheerful mom. Off camera, she cried quietly, worrying she wasn't doing enough. She feared the cameras were stealing her children's childhood, turning their lives into entertainment. Those close to her say guilt consumed her guilt, that the fame she'd chased might cost her what mattered most. Being a mother should have been her safe place, yet it became another source of pressure. Balancing health, career, and family left her drained. Some nights she sat in her car outside her house after filming, trembling, unable to face another demand. "I just want to be enough," she confided once. "For my kids, for my fans, for myself. But sometimes I don't know if I can." Her health journey, once a beacon of hope, grew more complicated. Every win became a public debate. Social media turned each photo, each slip-up, into a battlefield of opinions. Support poured in, but so did cruelty. She tried to ignore it, but the noise was constant. Still, Amy kept sharing her truth, her highs and lows, her real self. That honesty made fans love her, but it also left her exposed. Behind the scenes, fatigue and anxiety grew. Family tensions simmered. Fame brought new conflicts, money, schedules, expectations. Amy often acted as the glue, holding everyone together while breaking inside. Even strength has limits, and Amy's would soon be tested in the most painful way imaginable. Then came the day everything shattered. The footage TLC never aired. What was meant to be another simple day of filming turned into one of the rawest, most heartbreaking moments in reality TV history. Years of pressure, fear, and emotional exhaustion finally collided. The cameras were rolling when Amy, overwhelmed by rumors and legal fears about losing custody of her children, broke down completely. The woman the world knew, strong, cheerful, unshakable, crumbled in front of everyone. Surrounded by crew and family, Amy wept uncontrollably, crying that she couldn't lose her kids, that she would do anything to keep them close. Her voice trembled, her hands shook, and her pain filled the room. This wasn't for the cameras. This was raw, unfiltered reality. Those who were there never forgot it. Crew members cried. Even hardened producers were silent. It was too real, too human for television. The decision was made to shelve the footage. Some moments they agreed were too sacred for the screen. After that day, Amy stepped away from filming for a while. She focused on her children, her health, and her healing. But the emotional scars ran deep. Alone at night, she questioned whether fame had been worth the cost of judgment. The exposure, the endless need to perform. The dream that had once promised freedom had turned into a cage. Yet through all of it, Amy never lost her spirit. For fans, she remains a symbol of perseverance. Her story resonates because it's real. She's flawed, vulnerable, and brave. She's stumbled, cried, and stood back up again and again. In a culture obsessed with perfection, Amy's imperfections are her strength. The unseen footage of her breakdown became more than just a lost scene. It became a symbol of the unseen toll of fame. It showed that behind every episode lies a human being with fears, regrets, and love that can't be scripted. Amy's tears weren't for the cameras. They were for her children, her family, and the life she desperately wanted to protect. In the years since, she has continued to rebuild. She's set boundaries, learned self-care, and rediscovered her laughter, the kind that comes from surviving, not performing. Her joy now feels different, softer, earned through pain and recovery. Amy Slaton's journey has never really been about weight loss. It's about humanity's courage to keep living, to keep trying, even when the world is watching. Her story is one of heartbreak and healing, of breaking down and rebuilding stronger. Though the cameras turned away during her darkest hour, that unseen moment revealed the real Amy Slaton. A mother, a fighter. A woman learning to stand tall in the face of unimaginable pressure. Because strength doesn't always look like smiling through pain. Sometimes it looks like breaking down and still choosing to rise. Amy Slaton may have fallen apart that day, but in doing so, she showed the world what true resilience means. Her breakdown wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, a release, a rebirth, a moment of truth the world wasn't ready to see. And even though that footage never aired, her story continues to speak louder than any episode ever could. Amy Slaton's truth lives not in the edits of a TV show, but in the hearts of those who have seen her struggle, her courage, and her unyielding will to keep going no matter how heavy life becomes. No matter how heavy life becomes.
Months ago, your prealbumin now is in the high 17s. It's almost 18. So that tells me that
Stantley under a microscope. 2 millions. She is the bright, determined face of 1999B Sisters. A woman who fought through impossible odds, finding humor and courage even when the world seemed too heavy to bear. But behind the laughter, beyond the lights and cameras, lies another side of Amy's journey, one filled with fear, love, and the unthinkable heartbreak of a mother on the edge of losing everything that matters most. This is the unseen chapter of her life. The moment TLC never aired. The moment Amy broke down completely. her voice trembling as she whispered words that still haunt those who were there. Amy grew up in small-town Kentucky, surrounded by the simple rhythm of country life. Her family didn't have much, but they had each other. She and her younger sister Tammy were inseparable. They dreamed big, laughed often, and learned early that the world could be cruel. From childhood, Amy faced ridicule for her size, taunts that cut deep and left invisible scars. At school, she endured relentless teasing, but she hid her pain well, always shielding Tammy from the worst of it. Friends remember her as kind, but fierce someone who stood up for others even when she couldn't stand up for herself. There was always a spark in her, a quiet defiance that refused to die no matter how many times life tried to dim it. That same fire led Amy to television. When 1000 Delby Sisters became a reality, she saw a chance to tell her story honestly, to show that people like her could change, love, and fight for a better life. But fame came with a price. Cameras followed her into her home, her doctor's visits, and her most private moments. Fans celebrated her victories, but they also dissected every mistake. What she ate, how she spoke, how she parented, nothing was off limits. The same lens that gave her a platform also stripped away her privacy. Behind the edited episodes was a woman trying to balance motherhood, health, and fame, all while the world judged her every move. Motherhood changed everything for Amy. Her children became her light, her purpose, her reason to fight. Every choice she made revolved around them. But being a mother in the public eye brought pressures most people could never imagine. Filming schedules were long. Social media was relentless. There were days she felt like she was living two lives: the one the audience saw, full of laughter and progress, and the one off camera where exhaustion and guilt quietly ate away at her. Friends recall her crying late at night, whispering fears that she wasn't doing enough. "I love my boys more than anything," she said once. "But sometimes I feel like I'm failing them. Like I can't protect them from this life." As the show grew, so did the scrutiny. Fans adored her, but their expectations turned harsh. Online comments questioned her every decision, turning her personal growth into public debate. The same people who once cheered her on now demanded perfection. Yet Amy kept smiling, performing for the cameras, holding it together for her children and her fans. Tammy noticed it before anyone else. "She's trying so hard," she said quietly, "but I can see it in her eyes. She's breaking inside." The footage that was never shown was filmed during one of those breaking points. Production insiders later described Amy as exhausted, both physically and emotionally. Long filming days, medical checkups, and the constant need to be on had drained her. Still, she pushed through, trying to give producers what they wanted while keeping her real pain hidden. But that morning, something changed. The cameras were set up in her bedroom for what was supposed to be a routine interview. Amy answered questions about her family, her progress, her kids' topics she'd covered dozens of times. When it ended, she didn't move. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. The cameras kept rolling. Then she exhaled slowly, her breath trembling. "I don't know what I'd do without them," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. At first, no one spoke. The crew just watched as tears began to slip down her cheeks. "I'm nothing without my babies," she murmured. "They're my everything. I can't imagine life without them." Her voice cracked. Her hands covered her face as the sobs came harder. The camera didn't move. It captured every breath, every quiver, every sound of her heartbreak. It wasn't staged. It wasn't performed. It was real, raw, painful, human. Those who've seen the footage say it's almost unbearable to watch. There's no music, no editing, just Amy's quiet sobs echoing in the stillness of the room between tears. She began to speak again, confessing her fears. She worried she had failed as a mother, that her time in the spotlight might someday hurt her children. "I try every day to be strong," she said, her voice barely holding together. "But some days it feels like I'm drowning." Every word came from the deepest part of her, stripped of all pretense. "I love them so much," she continued through her tears. "I can't lose them. I can't." The crew didn't know what to do. Some wanted to stop filming. Others thought cutting away would dishonor how real the moment was. They decided to let it continue, recognizing they were witnessing something beyond television, a woman unraveling under the weight of love and fear. Off camera, Tammy reached out, holding her sister's hand. "You're not alone," she whispered. "We're here, Amy. You're not alone." But the words couldn't erase years of stress and judgment. This wasn't just a bad day, it was the collapse of years of bottled up emotion. Pain that had been quietly growing since the show began. Amy's breakdown wasn't about weakness. It was about humanity. The cameras captured something rare: a mother completely stripped of the armor she wore for the world. Every tear, every tremor, every whispered word was filled with love for her children. "They're my world," she said softly through her sobs. "Everything I do for them." It was the purest expression of motherhood, fear, love, and exhaustion colliding all at once. Those who later watched the clip said it felt too personal, too raw for TV. It wasn't a scene, it was a confession. TLC ultimately decided not to air the footage. Officially, they said it was too emotional, too private. But insiders claimed there were deeper reasons that showing Amy's collapse might have crossed a line, revealing pain that wasn't meant to be consumed by millions. Others disagreed, believing it was the most authentic moment in the show's history, the truest glimpse of Amy's heart. Whatever the reason, the footage was locked away, seen only by a few. Yet, those who were there never forgot it. The moment became legend behind the scenes, reminder of Amy's strength, her love, and her breaking point. After that day, Amy pulled back from filming for a while. She needed to breathe, to find herself again outside the constant noise of television. She spent quiet days with her boys, focusing on her health and healing. Friends who visited her said she seemed softer, calmer, more reflective. She spoke about wanting her kids to grow up proud, not of her fame, but of her resilience. Slowly, she rebuilt herself. She laughed again, genuinely this time. She smiled for her children, not for the cameras. Tammy stood by her side, and together, they found a fragile peace. What makes Amy Slaton's story powerful isn't the fame or the controversy, it's her humanity. She isn't perfect. She never claimed to be. Beneath the edits and the headlines is a woman who just wants to be a good mother, a loyal sister, and a person who keeps trying even when life feels impossible. Her tears in that unseen footage weren't weakness, they were proof of her strength. Because true strength isn't about smiling through pain, it's about surviving it. That breakdown was her body and heart finally saying, "I've carried enough." The unseen footage now stands as a hidden chapter in Amy's journey. A reminder that reality TV only scratches the surface of reality itself. What the cameras didn't show was a mother's deepest fear, losing her children, losing herself. But it also revealed something more: enduring love that refuses to fade, no matter how hard life gets. For all the chaos fame brought her, Amy's greatest truth has always been simple. She is a mother, and she loves her children more than words could ever say. When that long-buried footage finally comes to light, when the world sees her shaking, crying, whispering her fears into the silence, maybe then they'll understand who she really is. Not just a star of a weight loss show, not a figure of public opinion, but a woman, raw and real, holding on to the only thing that truly matters. The cameras caught her pain, but they also captured her strength. Because even at her lowest point, Amy never stopped loving, never stopped trying, and never stopped fighting for her family. In every sob, there was strength. In every tear, hope. That's the real Amy Slaton, the mother, the fighter. The survivor who refused to let the world break her, no matter how heavy it became. Let the world break her.
There is not a doubt in my mind. It's far enough away where all of y'all can stay out of my business.
Insiders describe the scene as heartbreaking yet profoundly human. There was nothing performative about Amy Slaton's confession. No scripted lines. No attempt to hold back. It was the raw, unfiltered emotion of a mother who had carried too much for too long. A woman finally releasing the pain buried beneath years of pressure, scrutiny, and love. To witness that moment was to see something beyond television. It was reality stripped bare. painful in its honesty because it mirrored fears that so many parents quietly live with every day. The fear of not being enough. The fear of losing what they love most. The fear of holding everything together while the world keeps pulling it apart. What the cameras captured that day wasn't entertainment, it was truth. Even after the cameras stopped rolling, the weight of that moment clung to the air. Friends say Amy sat for hours in her dimly lit room, replaying every tear, every word, every breath. A crew member later described it not as a breakdown, but as a release. She'd been holding it in for years, they said softly. When it finally came out, it was like all that exhaustion and pain finally had somewhere to go. For Amy, the moment had nothing to do with the show, the fame, or the headlines. It was about love. The kind of love that breaks you open and heals you at the same time. The love of a mother terrified of losing her children. What came next was a wave of quiet tension behind the scenes. TLC had captured one of the most emotionally raw scenes in the show's history. Yet the network made the difficult decision not to air it. The reasoning was never made public, but insiders whispered that it was simply too real, too sensitive. Some believed the footage crossed the invisible boundary between storytelling and a woman's private pain. Others said the network feared backlash from viewers who might misunderstand Amy's emotions. Whatever the case, the footage was locked away, a hidden chapter of her life that only a few people ever saw in full. Those who did described it as hauntingly powerful. It didn't feel like TV, one insider admitted. It felt like standing inside someone's soul for a few minutes. For fans who later heard about the scene, disbelief followed. Many said it would have changed how audiences viewed Amy not as a reality TV personality, but as a mother, a woman, a human being living with unbearable pressure. People who worked closely with her during that time said the unaired footage revealed sides of Amy that were rarely seen on screen. The tenderness, the guilt, the constant self-blame. One former crew member put it simply, people think they know Amy, but they don't. The Amy in that footage wasn't performing. That was her heart on full display. Her tears were not just about fear. They were the culmination of years spent trying to balance motherhood, public scrutiny, and her own sense of self-worth. The unseen footage became a quiet symbol of the emotional cost of reality television. For years, viewers have watched Amy and her family laugh, fight, and persevere. But this was different. It stripped away every layer of production and left nothing but humanity. There were no second takes, no edits, just raw emotion. A reminder that behind every smile and joke on screen is a real person carrying a weight we often can't see. Even though the footage never aired, its message lingered. In those few minutes, Amy showed the world the purest form of motherhood: messy, terrified, but profoundly beautiful. Her trembling voice, her whispered words, her desperate love for her son's each moment reflected the heart of a woman who would do anything for her children. Near the end of the scene, Amy can be heard whispering, "I just want them safe, happy, and loved. I'll do anything for them." Those simple words encapsulated everything: fear, devotion, and a love that refused to break. In the weeks that followed, conversations within TLC grew intense. Some producers pushed to air the footage, believing it would humanize Amy more than any scripted storyline ever could. Others argued it would be unethical to share something so deeply personal. Executives worried about her children, how the public might react, what attention it could bring, and whether the family was emotionally ready for that kind of exposure. They also debated whether such a heavy scene fit into the season's tone, which focused on progress and personal growth rather than heartbreak. Eventually, the decision was made quietly. The footage would remain unseen. But for those who had been there, the memory didn't fade. Even people who've worked in TV for decades said they'd never seen anything like it. A former producer confessed, "We've seen people cry, argue, break down, but this wasn't that. Amy wasn't acting. She wasn't seeking attention. She was just a mother, scared to death, and in that moment, every person in the room felt it." For Tammy and the rest of the family, the impact was just as deep. Tammy, who had been present during the aftermath, later shared that she spent hours sitting with her sister after filming stopped. She held Amy's hand, whispering, "You're a good mom. You've done everything right. Your kids love you. They know it." Tammy later said it wasn't just a single moment of fear. She said it was years of bottled up stress and guilt finally bursting through. The scene, though hidden from the public, became a turning point for the Slaton family. It forced them to have difficult conversations about emotional health, boundaries, and what it meant to share so much of their lives on camera. In the days that followed, Amy withdrew from filming. She needed space to breathe, to think, to heal. Friends said she spent her time journaling, taking quiet walks, and holding her children close. Some nights, she'd sit in silence, just watching them sleep. That moment changed her, a close friend later revealed. It broke her down, but it also woke her up. For the first time, she stopped pretending to be strong and allowed herself to feel everything. Mental health professionals familiar with the situation said Amy's collapse was not a failure, was a necessary release. Years of pressure had taken their toll, and expressing her pain was the first step toward recovery. Sometimes, one therapist noted, you can't heal until you stop suppressing what's breaking you. That day, Amy did exactly that. She let it all out, and in doing so, began to rebuild herself from the inside. Over time, Amy began to regain her sense of peace. She focused on her sons, leaned on Tammy for support, and tried to rebuild her confidence. The breakdown that once terrified her became, in hindsight, a moment of clarity. It forced her to confront her deepest fears and reminded her of what truly mattered. Those around her noticed the difference. She smiled more often, laughed with her kids, and seemed more grounded. She found strength in her vulnerability, one friend said. She realized she didn't have to be perfect, just present. For the production team, the memory of that day left a lasting mark. Many said it changed how they viewed their work. "We see people cry on camera all the time," one former crew member reflected. But this was different. This was real life, not content. It made us rethink the line between documenting and intruding. Amy's pain, they said, reminded everyone that reality stars are human beings, first, people with families, fears, and hearts that break just like anyone else's. Though the footage remains locked away, its existence has become part of the show's quiet mythology. Fans discuss it with reverence, describing it as the most real moment in the series, even though they've never seen it. Some wish TLC had shared it with the world, believing it could have inspired compassion and understanding. Others are glad it stayed private, seeing it as something too sacred for television. Either way, it has become a symbol of Amy's strength, a testament to her resilience, her honesty, and her humanity. What makes the story so powerful isn't the secrets, it's what it says about who Amy truly is. Beneath the fame, the headlines, and the edits, she remains a mother fiercely devoted to her children. Her tears, her trembling words, her whispered promise to protect them at any cost, reveal a woman whose love outweighs everything else. Even unseen, that footage speaks louder than any episode could. In the end, that moment stands as a quiet, defining chapter in Amy Slaton's journey. It wasn't weakness that brought her to tears, it was love. It was honesty. It was the simple, painful truth that even the strongest people sometimes break. Somewhere deep in TLC's archives, that footage still exists, unseen, untouched, but unforgettable to those who were there. They remember the silence after her final words, the sound of her sobs fading, and the understanding that they had witnessed something rare and real. For Amy, that truth became her turning point, a moment when she stopped performing and simply allowed herself to be. Because at the heart of all the chaos and criticism, she is still just a mother who loves her children beyond measure, woman who broke down not out of weakness, but out of love so deep it refused to stay hidden. And maybe that's what makes her story so human. Not the fame, not the struggle, but the courage to be real when the world was watching.